Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and good night, depending on your time zone. Ciao Alberto.
Ciao. Ciao Marco. Ciao friends. Ciao friends.
Ciao friends, ciao friends. So Alberto, are you ready? We have a lot of
Let
questions pending and probably others that are coming.
Of course, you're handling the question. I've seen a lot of comment coming in, people from all the
Yeah,
world.
yeah. So
Adam.
just
Oh,
before we
Adam is speaking
start,
Italian. Ciao. Cool.
ciao Adam. So before we start, we already received a few questions, but you are free to post your questions in the chat window. Maybe you can prefix with a Q just to make us able to figure out the questions in the list. We already have received a few ones that are the first one that we will try to answer, but you can also comment the questions during our session. And I remember that I want to remind you that the session is about budgeting with Power BI. We recorded a session 1 week ago that we published on YouTube, and we asked you to watch the session before attending the Q&A. We want to try to keep us focused on the topic of the session. I know that maybe if we have time, we want to go live. We will stay live for at least 1 hour. So if we receive other questions that are not on topic, if we have time at the end, we will try to answer. Otherwise, we try to stay focused on the budgeting. So data modeling questions, DAX questions, or anything that is related to the business problem of how to manage a budget in Power BI using a data model with DAX. This is what we want to talk about today. And this is an experiment to see if this format can work also for other sessions in the future. Anything else, Alberto,
And
before we start?
we also have people from Italy.
Oh,
David,
yes.
Jose. Wow. Cool.
Nice. Okay, so let's go. We can start with the first question, right? This is a
Let's
live
try
Q&A.
technology.
So
I want to see the question coming up, popping up on the
okay,
screen.
here we go. So the first question is, I heard that many-to-many relationships is dangerous. However, in your example, it seems working totally fine. When is it really dangerous to use many-to-many relationships?
Well,
Alberto.
that's extremely easy. If we do that, we can. If you do that, that is kind of dangerous. No,
Come on.
many to many are not dangerous at all. Meaning that you can use many to many with no issue at all. The thing about many to many is that in order to use them, you need to enable bidirectional cross filter, and that is the problem. So in our example, or in general, you can safely use bidirectional cross filter as long as it's at the end of a chain of relationships. So you don't have
Adam
Adam.
says it depends.
It depends. It always depends.
Yeah, yeah.
No, you can
Okay.
safely use bidirectional cross filter at the end of a chain of relationship. So if you have a chain of relationship and you are near the end, that's fine. You can go for bidirectional there. We have enabled bidirectional cross filter in that model. I think it's kind of fine. Now, let me check the model. Marco, maybe share the
Okay.
screen.
Here we go. Oops, I made a
No,
mistake.
that's
No, this
the
is.
two of us together.
Oh, nice. Oh, wait a minute. I had to add this to the stream. Here we go.
Okay, cool. Now, in this specific case, we have 1, 2, 3 bidirectional cross filter because we have 3-week relationship between customer data and product and the budget table. But that should not create any kind of ambiguity because the only chain starts from sales, which is customer data and product, and all 3 filter project. But then the relationship does not go back. So that works just fine. You can use bidirectional cross filter in this case. Actually, this is the case with the weak relationship, so we are not using bidirectional here. I should have, but maybe we will look at that later.
Yeah,
I will
yeah.
load the model with the bidirectional cross filter.
Okay.
Anyway, the quick answer is you can use many-to-many. That poses no problem at all. You only need to be careful with bidirectional cross filter. With BiDi, the rule is always the same. If you know what you're doing and if you check for ambiguity, go for that. There's no problem. What I'm scared of are people that use bidirectional cross filter without understanding the danger that is happening in their model. But if you understand that and if you make sure that everything works fine, bidirectional cross filter is a feature, and is a feature worth definitely worth using.
Okay, I think we have a couple of questions from the live chat. Let me get the first one, which is very easy, and I think many people want to know how to use the PBIX file. Well, the PBIX file can be downloaded from, I think we provided the link in the description of the session we posted on YouTube. If I remember well, we have that there.
I also put that on the screen. If you share that now, there's the article.
Okay, so let me go to your screen. Here we go.
And yes. This is the article that contains, actually this article covers the last part of the session, which is showing actuals and forecasts in the same report. But the PBIX file that you can download from here is the very same PBIX file that you see here on the screen that contains the most complex formula. So it contains the full formula that works with different years and works just fine.
Okay.
On that model, you can repeat the entire process.
Okay, so before we go to another question online, I have this comment. This is very interesting. It looks like Adam has been teaching Alberto how to do live streams too. So thank you. And it is true, actually. It is true.
Actually, yeah, it is true. I mean, we learned a lot from Guy in a Cube. For example, one thing that I learned is to say, "Yo, what's up?"
No, you're not good at all at this.
Not at all. I mean,
okay.
I will never be as good as them.
Okay, we have another question from Roxana. I saw the video for the budgeting, and I saw what Alberto did for the previous year. How can we make it more automated? Like if we are in 2021, that it does for the previous year, and so and so. So probably the question is about how to make it, how to automate.
Yeah, how to make it work with different years. Yeah. And again, share the screen, so I'll show them the formula.
Okay, here we go.
Because what we saw during the session was a simplified version of the entire code, because the goal of the session was to show you how to understand the code. My goal was not providing a formula that worked everywhere, but I wanted to show you the details on how to build it and how to reason on top of it. But if you download the file from the article we saw earlier and you look at the forecast code, which is computing the forecast, here I removed any reference to time. So this formula is allocating by brand, by country region, and regarding the year is taking the sales amount in the previous year, and it's taking for the budget the value in the previous year. So this formula works if you have budget for different years and sales for different years. It will allocate the budget of 1 year based on the sales in the previous year. And it supports multiple years present in the budget. Therefore, you can also check, for example, how far the previous year was from being a realistic budget, and maybe use that information in order to further correct the next year. So the formula that you see here is kind of complex because it covers many different scenarios, but it contains all the details. And besides that, the same, I think, code very similar to this, you can also find in daxpattern.com, where we have the budget pattern that basically contains this code plus a lot more reasoning, how to work with new products, how to allocate using different algorithms. But yeah, the entire code is explained there, and that version already supports multiple years.
Okay. Alberto, we also have another question that I think we can share with the same screen, because it's partly related to what we are saying. Let me show you.
Yep.
How to allocate the budget to the month level if you're having the year granularity.
Okay, what do you mean by that? I mean, that's exactly what the formula does.
Indeed. I think not. Maybe that it... No, well, it's already allocating by using the sales in the previous year with the same distribution of the granularity of the budget that we defined. So in theory, it should already work. So maybe if you clarify the question, if it is not what you asked, we
Yeah,
can,
because
we can
maybe it's
clarify.
the opposite. They want to understand how to group sales that are already at the month level at the year that I didn't understand, but
Okay,
you can
so
go
let's
further.
go to another question of those that we prepared, that we received in advance. And let me go back to this visualization. With some extra DAX magic, we could set it up as any year budgeting, right? Budget as year as a column, we allocate using percentage of sales in the previous year, which is, I think, is related to the same question
Yeah,
we just
yeah.
answered,
It's
right?
but go back to the screen.
Yep.
Because one thing that I haven't shown during the session, and it's worth looking at, is that okay, let's zoom in. This version of the code is dynamically allocated. So during the session, I show you how to build the relationship with customer and with product based on the brand and on the country region, which were already columns in the budget table. In order to build the same relationship with the data, what I needed to do in the version that you can download is add in the budget table a column that contains the year. I cannot zoom it here, but you see we have a calendar year in the budget table that basically contains only the year. And this column is needed because we want to build this relationship that is based on a year. So it's a many-to-many weak relationship between date and budget based on a column that only contains the year. And this lets you create multiple years in the same budget table because the relationship will take care of making it work.
Okay, so let's go back here and I go to a next question, which is about Power Query. So the idea is that we have this session is about creating an allocation of the budget that is dynamic and it is written in DAX. And this comment is about why shouldn't we use Power Query to do that? You can, of course, but the problem is just that if you use Power Query, what you have to do the allocation of the budget at the minimal granularity level for your model. So for example, if you have the budget at the year level and at the product category level, but you have sales at the day level and at the product name level, and you want to get the same granularity for your visualization of the budget, this allocation has to be done in advance at that level of granularity, which could require creating a very large amount of data. So the dynamic allocation in DAX only computes what is required for the specific visualization that you have to do. Moreover, if you want to introduce a scenario where you do this allocation dynamically based on some other parameter, I don't think in this example, Alberto, we've shown the selection of the different scenario or the idea of allocating a percentage of increase or decrease that you can change dynamically, right?
No, I think we have the scenario. So we
Okay.
have different scenarios, but that's it. The scenario is
Yeah.
basically, you see, from here you can change
Okay.
the scenario and choose a high, low, medium, and that changes the value of the forecast.
Yeah.
But these are just fixed values which are stored in the model. In order to
Okay.
create dummy data,
So-
I just took the sale.
I think that the answer is just it depends, as usually depends. But if you are fine with a static allocation, you don't need a very large amount of data to get the granularity you want. You can just move forward with Power Query. It's also faster at the end of the day. But otherwise, this approach is good because it is dynamic.
And that is the politically correct answer. The right answer is if DAX is too heavy for you, then it's time to roll up your sleeves and learn DAX. I mean, it has so much to offer you, not only budgeting. You can compute whatever with DAX. So just go there and learn it.
Okay, so let's see. We have new questions coming here. So let me see this question here, which is, can you explain why you believe that measures should be in the fact table? Does it relate to how you see composite models over PBI dataset done in enterprise settings? Wow. Okay, just the short answer, the reason why we suggest to use the measure definition in the fact table is because if you don't do that, there are two features that don't work as expected. One is analyzing Excel, the drill-through doesn't work. And the second is Q&A in Power BI, which has a problem if you have these situations. It doesn't understand the relationships between your measure and the rest of the model. And the impact for the composite model is another session, another hour. I don't know, Alberto, if you want to add something, but...
No, but I think, I mean, where you put the measure is not relevant for composite model specifically. It is for Q&A and for drill through. If you are not interested in other features, then you can put your measures wherever. There are no restriction on where you put your measures. I've seen a lot of people building a measure table just for the sake of having a single place where to put measures. Yeah, that's it. I mean, the table that hosts a measure is just a placeholder. And unless you're not concerned with Q&A and drill through, it's just fine.
The next question is about, I have seen a question in the live chat and another question we already prepared. So I showed the question we received before, but it's similar to another question I have seen in the chat, which is about the performance. The question that I have seen in the chat, let me show you. It's similar, but it's related to 3 tasks, but we can union the answer in the same question. Let me see this one. This is the other question which is related. So what about the performance of the many-to-many relationship, the 3 tasks performance, and the original question of Amedeo is what about a technical description of why the performance of the many-to-many is better if we use the table in the middle instead of the many-to-many cardinality relationship. Alberto, I answered, you answer.
That's the same. I was waiting for you to answer, but I can go I can go for that. That's not an issue.
In general, the best thing you can do, you always use, when you can, always use a physical relationship one-to-many, okay? Because this is the best way to use the engine. Then, if you have to connect 2 tables in a many-to-many cardinality relationship, which means that you have a many-to-one, one-to-many relationship if you have a relational structure, then in that case, it is true, like Amedeo says, that if we create the table in the middle, instead of using the many-to-many cardinality relationship we have in Power BI, we get better performance. But this is visible only when the number of unique values you have in the column is above, let's say, 100, 200. Let's say 1,000 to just to be sure to see the difference. Other techniques like 3 tasks, intersect, filter, and other techniques you can use in DAX are always slower. So in order, first, if you can, one-to-many relationship. You cannot a chain of one-to-many, many-to-one relationship. You cannot, the many-to-many cardinality, you cannot use DAX. But DAX is the very last option that you have. Now, if you have to use DAX, 3 tasks is faster than the alternatives. But it is orders of magnitude slower, than any other option we described with the relationship, with the physical relationship.
Yeah, besides, is 3 tasks faster than bidirectional cross filter? Or than a many-to-many?
I
don't know.
It depends.
It depends.
But 90% of the time, no. 90% of the time, no. But there could be cases there, yeah.
We can also add to that from a modeling point of view, if you build the physical table in the middle, then you have more control over your data. So you can actually build a table that hosts values from the 2 tables and can filter both fact tables efficiently. So you have control over that. If you rely on the bidirectional, on the many-to-many relationship, then you either filter from one table or the other one. But if a value appears only in one table, you will lose it if you filter from the wrong one. So the bridge table in the middle from the modeling point of view is to be considered a best practice. It's not as fast and as easy as as a many-to-many relationship. But
Yeah, just when look at the other question, there is a comment about what we said before from Alex. He says, I don't know about the drill through in Excel. Yeah, but this is actually the feature that is also available with detail rows. And so in theory, we could control it. So the limitation we described could be overcome if we use a feature that is not enabled today in Power BI Desktop, but it is available for Azure Analysis Services or Analysis Services, but just
it's not available in Power BI Desktop, basically because there's no UI and because it crashes right now.
And right now it crashes. If you try to use Tabular, it crashes, yes. Because we're waiting.
But it should work.
When it will work, we will write an article describing how to fix it.
Just in case maybe there is somebody from Microsoft, like Adam, who's listening.
I already wrote to a number of people in Microsoft saying
I know that.
It's just a question of priorities. Anyway, so let me see if let me go here to another question we received before, which is, let me see this one. Here we go. So I think that this is, I mean, we already
answered that.
Okay, sorry. First time I have to pay something. So let's see this other question. How can we split the budget of a new country? Same value through the year, all allocation by average, but sales through the year in other countries. Alberto, this is for you.
You can. You can do that. It's going to be much harder than you expect because think about that. If you have a given value for the budget, let's say you have $100 for the budget of 2010, you have 3 countries to which you sold in the past, but in the budget you have a 4th country. So you need to use the 3 countries. You need to match the countries which exist in both sets and use the percentage of the previous year to allocate values. Then you need to remove what you have allocated from the total of the budget, take the remaining part and use some other algorithm. We did that just because it was super fun to build the code that handles that. So if you go to daxpattern.com and you look at the budgeting scenario, you will find the complete solution. It doesn't work for the country. We simulated that for the product. So we created a configuration table where you can basically declare new products for which you are not expected to have sales in the previous year. And for those products, the budget will be allocated based only on the country. Or you can dismiss product. You can say, well, the previous year I was selling those products, but in the next year I'm not planning to sell them anymore. So do not take into account these products for the past year when doing the allocation. As you might expect, the code becomes more complex because you need to build the temporary tables, mash up everything, and finally produce a number. The thing is, when you start doing stuff like this, the code becomes very, very complex and really hard to debug. So it's up to you. You can do that. And if you are interested, it's definitely worth going to DaxPattern, download the file, read the content, and practice on that, because that code is much more complex than what we have shown during the session.
We spent a lot of time optimizing those patterns. So
totally. Checking the numbers, that was the nightmare.
I have a small question about what we said before about the drill through in the Excel pivot table.
Yeah.
It's very simple, double click. You double click on a cell and you get the default drill through. There is another advanced feature in Excel to get an action over the multidimensional model, but this is not supported at all in Analysis Services Tabular, and so not in Power BI Desktop. But you just double click on a cell in a pivot table and you get the default drill through. When you have the measure in the table, the fact table, you see the underlying data exposed in Excel, and it is very fast. So next, this is another interesting question. I have a very quick answer. How can I create a list of measures dynamically? Let's say a measure for each year between 2010, 2020 via loop in a tabular editor. Indeed, in tabular editor, you have to use a C# script, and you can loop over, for example, the content of a dimension. Actually, I'm not sure you can
I'm totally
iterate the
not
content
sure.
of the dimension, because you only can evaluate the metadata, but you have to check in the discussion forum, because I think that someone created some more complex example, or just write a question there in the forum, in the GitHub repository of Tabular Editor, and I'm sure that Daniel will reply, because he always follow all the questions. So
Yeah, the thing about those C# scripts is that you see people like Daniel doing wonders with that C# script. I have never been able to learn it properly, but
yeah.
you can do, yeah, nearly whatever.
Yeah, I have another question about the measure. I'm not convinced to
To
abandon
abandon
the
the
measures
measures
table.
table.
You don't have to. The important thing, you have to know why we suggest not to use that. But if you're comfortable and you are not required to use those features, that's fine. There are no problems. I mean, it
Yeah,
just works.
not only that there are no problems, but I actually like a lot the idea of the dimension table. So
Yeah.
it would be lovely to be able to put the measure wherever you want.
Okay,
Can you
so,
put that? More, I want to
yep.
see Morten question. What do you consider best practice for building tabular models?
Sorry.
Which is not related to budgeting at all.
Sorry, what are you talking about? Sorry? You wanted to
Morten
see...
Hannibal Olsen.
Okay, this one.
That one.
What do you
Just
consider
because
best
I love
practice
that question.
for building tabular models? A single... this is another... this is a session about the budgeting. Okay, so you have
Totally.
20 seconds. You have 20 seconds, Alberto, then I will drop it.
You can start a war with that. Anyway, the answer to this question is extremely simple. You need to build the proper number of models, where by proper, I mean whatever, it's up to you. It's not that you shouldn't be scared to build a large model if you need a large model, and you shouldn't be scared at all to build multiple models if you need multiple models. If you have two different entities or two different businesses that just share a bunch of tables, but they have complete different view of the data, then build two models. Or just from the point of view of size, if they are very large and merging them together is a problem, build two models. Building models is our job, so we shouldn't be scared of building multiple models. It's a dream that of one model that solves everything. There's no point that you don't get anything.
But now we go back to the budgeting problem. So here we go.
And especially if you talk about budgeting, for budgeting, you need to prepare a specific model.
So now we are on topic again. Okay, good. So how can I display the same value for all the months in a table? Example, table has two columns, sales and quantity, display same value for sales for all months, but quantity should change. I'm not sure I understand the
Exactly.
question.
I was about to say, can you rephrase that?
Yeah,
so the same value for all the months in a table?
I don't know. I mean, I don't understand the question, because potentially there is a specific business case for this question, but we don't have the context.
Yeah,
so
that's exactly what I was thinking about. It's like...
It's not easy to understand. Okay, so let's go. Let me scroll through other questions. And let's go. Oh, this is a technical question about... they have some good items there. This is the public API you are using. They have I don't know if it is related to our... we're using StreamYard as a platform to deliver the streaming, and it collects the questions from multiple channels. We are on Twitch, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook at the same time.
Yeah, I think this is for Kelly, because we are answering also questions that you might not see in your specific stream, because we are collecting questions from different sources. And I was looking at YouTube earlier, and many questions are coming from LinkedIn, so people from YouTube don't see the question. They need to wait for us to write it down.
Okay, so let's see. I'm skipping questions that are not related. Sorry, guys, but we have too many questions, and we want to stay focused on the budgeting. That's a question. Can you please explain the cardinality of using cross-join in the budgeting? I think this is a technical question about the cross-join.
Why we use cross-join.
Yeah.
Yep.
So let's go to
the screen. Let's look at the code. I guess you mean this cross-join. Increase that a bit. Okay, that is beautiful. Keep filters of a cross join. So
Yep.
why do we do that? The thing is, the budgeting calculation requires you to perform the math at the lowest level of granularity supported, because the budget is provided at the granularity of brand and country region. So you cannot do any kind of calculation if you are not at the cardinality of brand and country region. Now, brand and country region belong to two different tables. One is in the product table, the other one is in the customer table. So you cannot build one single query that merges data from budget, from product and customer, because they are two separate tables. We can also look at that in the diagram view. Product is here, customer is here, and the only table that will let you join them is sales. So if instead of using, if you wanted to express the combinations, all the possible combination of brand and country region, you could start from sales and use a summarized sales by brand and country region. But by doing that, you would be only relying on existing combination, whereas you don't want to do that. You want all the possible combinations. So this cross join builds all the combination of brand and country region. Then the problem is you outside of this cross join have another filter, because in a report like this one, you might place a filter that we don't have. So let me add a filter by product brand, for example. Okay, as a slicer. So you place a filter for only Contoso. How does this filter work in our formula? In the formula, that filter will work because we have these key filters outside everything. So cross join builds the full cross join of all the values of the brand and all the values of country region, including values that should not be visible because of filters coming from the outside. This keep filter says, yes, that is fine, but this table might be larger than the outside filter. You will need to intersect this table with the outside filter before doing further calculation. So when context transition is invoked inside this iteration, it will find not only the shadow filter created by the cross join, but also the outer filter that has not been invalidated by the current filter. So using keep filters of cross join basically means give me all the combinations that are visible in the current context of these two columns, without requiring you to summarize from sales that would only return the values which are visible in sales, not potentially values that are valid even though they are not visible in sales. That was rather technical, I know. In the session, we go to some details about that. I don't know, Marco, if we ever recorded or prepared an article about that. It's an interesting topic, but we probably never explained that in detail.
I think not in detail, but we can say two things. One, we have another question about which of your publications will be helpful in looking further into this, and I want to show this is the pattern we discussed before. So if you go to daxpatterns.com/budget, you have the full description of this pattern. You can download the examples in both Power BI and Excel, Power Pivot for Excel. We also have a video for this pattern that explains the formula in more detail, which includes part of the explanation that Alberto was discussing, even though it doesn't include an explanation of the why we have to do that. But in the context of the budget, this is explained. In the general context of DAX, it's a different problem that could deserve a future article. But for the purpose of the budget, I think that the explanation we have in the video is enough. So you can go here, look at all the links we have in this page, and it should work for you too. Okay?
And then the definite guide to DAX. I mean,
of course.
I would say that 90% of the details about this formula are really impossible to understand unless you have a very good understanding about raw context, filter context, context transition, shadow filter context, and intersection of filters. It's always the same. DAX is simple, but it's not easy.
Another question that is related, I'm not sure we are able to answer, but the idea is that what if I have budget over different dimensions that cannot combine? So the budget for the years is 20 million, is divided by the debtors and is divided by item group, but not combined. I'm not sure I understand correctly. So it seems that you have a definition of the budget for two different dimensions, but you don't have any intersection between the two, which means that you should have to combine these two budgets before. And my suggestion is to create a static table that pre-allocate the budget at the granularity you want to use. So the budget should have a granularity of the budget. What we do in this example is to propagate the granularity of the budget to the granularity of the sales so that you can propagate dynamically one budget that should have one granularity. Granularity that is the combination of different dimensions. Otherwise, I'm not saying it is impossible to solve this dynamically, but you are really looking for trouble because the calculation we do is already expensive, and adding other complexity not only makes the DAX code much harder to write and to debug, but also slower. Alberto, some comment about that, or?
No, I was just listening to you because, yeah, that's fine. I mean,
okay.
I don't really know why you might not be interested in combining them, but that's more a budgeting.
Okay.
Besides, I was reading about Patrick discussing with Adam about the video on C# code in the tabular editor.
We have another question about DAX, this one, which is all except versus all values. And, you know, which one is better? Can we use all except if we only want to use a country region column? And we only had the country region, a filter on country region. So can we avoid using all except? Can we avoid using all and values?
All except all and values and use all except? If the main difference or the reason why you should use all values is because you might be in a scenario where the column for which you want to preserve the filtering might not be filtered. So you want to preserve a filter on the country region, and the filter instead is at the continent level. So the continent is filtered, the country region is not filtered, but you want to keep that filter on the country region, which has no filter on top of it. So in that scenario, using all values guarantees you that you are keeping the correct filter. So it is kind of true that if you are sure, if you only want to show data at the country region level and you guarantee that the filter is present at the country region, then all except works just fine. But you might have filters that are coming from above, so not below, but above the country region. The example was continent country region. That is a scenario that you want to support. I filter Asia, and I want to filter all the countries in Asia, but I'm not placing the filter on the country, I'm placing the filter on the continent. So I'm still at the granularity that you want to support, still you don't have a filter. So I would strongly prefer using all values all the time, even because performance-wise, there is virtually no difference. All is extremely fast, all just get rid of any filter. Values just queries a simple dimension, grabbing the values which are visible. It's gonna be super fast. So you don't have a performance benefit by using all except, and you build code that is kind of more dangerous. So I would go for all values all the time.
Okay, I have seen a question I wanted to show. Let me see if I lost it. Oh, here we go. I struggle to present the output of budget versus actuals in Power BI due to limitation with the matrix visual. I heard the calculation groups could help there. Any tips to get started? Appreciated. I think that the problem is I can imagine that the question is about you are not able to create the proper layout with a matrix as you would do in Excel. Now, you can do something by creating maybe calculation groups to apply different transformations to the measure. But in this specific case, I'm not sure that this will help you because actual sales and budget are two different measures. I'm not sure that the calculation group could help you. Usually we do this for transformations like, for example, time intelligence. And if I don't want to apply the same time intelligence transformation to all the measures I have in a matrix, imagine this, you have the sales and the budget, and you want to see the difference as a percentage with the previous year between the budget and between the sales, but not for another measure, or so only for the sales, but not for the budget. So you want to apply a calculation item only to one measure, not to the other. The regular layout in the matrix doesn't work, but if you create a slicer with a hierarchy, with the two columns, one the calculation item, the other another table that should represent the measures. So you need to display the measures with another calculation group, for example. Then you can combine any tuple you want, any combination you want of the calculation item for the time intelligence, the calculation item for the measure. Performance-wise, it's not a good idea, but it works. Even though a better user experience should be expected for the matrix and for the calculation groups. I wrote a blog a few months ago asking some improvement in the user interface, and I also provided a link to vote on ideas.powerbi.com, an item asking for a better consumption experience for the calculation groups, because this would help probably also in your case. But as of today, we have several limitations. So let's go to another question we received in advance, and this one is everything for you, Alberto. Here we go. With a corporate data set, with the actual sales, would you build a new composite model using direct query over analysis services, or would you import both the actual sales and budget data in a new data set?
I mean, obviously, I would go for a composite model. I think that when I recorded the session, I really wanted to use composite models, mainly because I mean, they're so cool that it's worth using them all the time. The problem is it was a preview. It is still in preview, and it was crashing all the time. So it was impossible to build the full demo using composite models. If I were to record the session today, I would be able to do that. And I actually tried that just as an exercise. It works beautifully. The main advantage is that you keep all the information about sales in the remote model, in the cloud, wherever it is. You don't have to worry about refreshing data. You don't have to worry about anything. The model is there. It works. The business logic is absolutely fine. What you want to add to this model is just the budget table with some calculations on top of your specific data. So I would definitely go for a composite model. And personally, I think that budgeting is likely to be one of the best scenarios for composite models. Just think about the fact that when you want to refresh your data in the budget, you just hit refresh, and that's it. You don't have to reload data from anywhere. The data in the cloud is up to date. You refresh your Excel file with your forecast, and that's it. It works. So it's likely to be one of the best scenarios for composite models. If only it worked, you would have seen the demos with composite models, and maybe we will re-record it later.
When it will work.
When it will work. No, actually, it works. As of today, it works.
Okay. No.
Not yet. Well, no. We have seen something that seems to work.
We have access to some preview, but in a few, I think in 1 or 2 weeks, you will have the February release, and it should have a lot of fixes. Now, calculation groups is a great feature, but is also an incredibly complex feature. So it surprised me that it didn't have so many bugs. Okay, so it has bugs, but I mean, it's obvious. The complexity is outstanding. I have no words to describe how much complex is the problem they solve.
But I think it's easy to describe that, because whenever there is a new feature and something doesn't work, I look at the feature and say, why doesn't it work? That's a bug. In the case of composite models, whenever something works, I look at that and say, "Oh my gosh, it's working! That's incredible! It sounds impossible that they have been able to do that," and they had.
Okay, back to the budgeting questions. We have how do you show the future budget amount by month in a column chart when the user selects a particular month in a month-year slicer? Can we use a second date table and calc group with 3 tabs? So I think that you are discussing the case where you have different versions of the budget and you want to select the version of the budget, because otherwise you should see the budget of the month where you are asking. So if the case is, I want to see a particular version of the budget, look at the example, you just need a scenario. So it's the same problem that we solved using the column scenario. You just have to connect a period table, a date table, and use that. Otherwise, the question is not clear. Right, Alberto? Or
Yep.
okay. I've been asked to do a budgeting model by adding 7% to sales for each manager month year. How can I do if there is a new manager or if I have less than one manager this year or next? Alberto, this is for you, and I think that this is the problem that we have discussed, I think, in the pattern. What happens if you have a budget for something that doesn't exist, or you have something that doesn't exist in a budget, which is, inconsistency between the
we
two.
already answered to that earlier.
Okay.
In this very live session. We don't show the code here. It's kind of complex to author the code to handle new entry, new budget, new manager, new products, new whatever. But it can definitely be done. So if you just go to daxpattern.com, download the code, read the comment, read the entire pattern, maybe watch the videos, that will give you a much better explanation on how to solve the problem. That is definitely solvable.
Would it be a good option to compute a ratio on colors category? This KPI ratio is a metric to use DAX and monitor it as a KPI. I'm trying to understand the question because sometimes the problem is...
Yes. So she's speaking about checking whether
you create
the ratio on colors is the same as the previous year. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that, okay, I try to translate. We use the color as an example in the article, in the video, to allocate the budget by color, which is not an attribute we have in the budget. So why we could use this ratio also to check for the future. Actually, I don't understand. Maybe if you can clarify in a following question, we can try to reply in a better way. So let's go to the other questions we prepared before, and here there is another one. Which is this one already replied. Here we go. How do you recommend collecting the budget input data from sales managers, Excel file teams, other alternative in the Microsoft X system? Oh,
I have the answer.
Yeah.
It depends.
No, I have a better answer. You can do what you want. It's something that you can do in many different ways.
You were saying it depends.
No, I didn't want to. So the idea is that, of course, Excel file, can I say one thing? Excel is the best data entry user interface ever. Okay, it's so easy to insert data in Excel. Also wrong data, I know, but this is the side effect of having a wonderful UI. And yes, if you spend some time creating the right model in Excel, creating constraints where you try to avoid getting numbers where you expect strings, for example, you don't have to do too much work in validating the data. The only problem using Excel, in my opinion, is that you are not 100% sure that the data is good, because people could inject errors in the Excel file. Not that other formats are better, it's just that usually other formats require a UI that validate the data in advance. But you have forms, you have a SharePoint, you have a Power App, you have a lot of tools that you can use. Just choose what is good for your environment.
Yeah, I think I've seen several demos of people using Power App to do that. And yeah, it just works. But
You
whatever is fine.
know, every 6 months there is a new technology, and they create a new demo with something with a new technology. And so but we always see the same demo. I mean, think about this.
Just put it this way.
Yeah.
Whatever technology, if DAX does not run on top of it, it's not so interesting. So choose whatever.
Okay, so there is a question that we also have in the live chat, which is about the difference between remove filters and all. Alberto, can you comment on that?
You mentioned the remove filters is fine, but isn't remove just an alias for all? Yes, I guess. Alexander is speaking about the fact that we had a problem with circular dependency in the session, and I went searching for all the instances of all and get rid of it. The problem is that all returns the blank row. So when you use all as a table function, all returns the blank row. But always keep in mind that all has two different natures. All can be used as a table function, and in that case it returns the blank row, or all can be used as a calculate modifier, and in that case it behaves as a remove filter. It does not care at all about the blank row. It just kills any filter if they are present. So using all as remove filters is safe because you are not touching the blank row, and remove filter is an alias for all used as a calculate modifier. All becomes the source of circular dependencies if you use it as a table function, which happens, for example, when you use a filter in calculate that becomes translated into filter all column and then the condition. There, all is not remove filter, it's actually a table filter that returns all the values of a column plus the blank row. And that is why you need to get rid of it or replace it with all the blank row.
Just to take a 30 seconds break. This is a question for you, Alberto. What is your setting? And so you can announce what you're going to prepare.
I started writing the blog post about the gear that I use this morning. It's actually nearly finished because English Wines has been corrected. I'm just waiting to publish it because I just bought a new PC which is coming in a matter of a couple of days, and I want to put a photo of that too. So I have a blog post where I describe everything that I use, mainly because I benefit so much from other people sharing their setup. I copied all what I could from Adam, from Brent Tozar, for any YouTuber. Whenever I see somebody using a technique that I like, I try to steal their knowledge. And I grew up this way. So I thought it was my turn now to do the same. I'm totally not an expert, but maybe you can find some good ideas in my setup.
Okay, let's go back to the technical questions about the budgeting. This is not actually about the budgeting, but is very related. And this question is about the non-typical date table. So what happens if we don't have a structured like regular calendar? Maybe we have 13 months, and I have good news. We have the solution already, because if you go here in the same website here, daxpatterns.com, we have in the time patterns, we have one pattern which is about month-related calculations. And this pattern is very, very good for two reasons. First, it is faster than any other day table you want to use. Basically because you have a 10%, less than 3% of the rows, and so any calculation is faster when you have to do something complex. The second reason is that we have here the management of years with more than 12 months. And in accounting, it happens that you might have a 13th month where you put particular transactions, which are end-of-year transaction, corrections, something like that. So whenever you have a situation that cannot be managed with a regular calendar, instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, just go here. We spent months studying this and use the examples and the pattern we created. It is very useful, I think. Alberto, anything else here or?
No, because I was not listening to you. I was just reading the articles.
Come on.
Not the articles, the comments. They are
Okay.
discussing about keyboards, hardware setup, so
Okay,
it's cool
okay,
to
okay.
read that.
Okay, so let's go back to the questions. We have a couple of questions more. So first is, I have many dimensions, but only 2 relevant for a budget. How would you recommend to blank the budget value if a user uses those irrelevant for a budget tables? I mean, Alberto,
Okay.
you want to show the
You
code?
use this cross
or-
filter. You use this filter to check whether the
Yeah.
user applied the filter on those specific dimension, and in that case, you blank them out. You cannot use the technique used in the budget, in the example we provide, because those dimensions, even being filtered, they will not affect the product or the budget or any table that you use as a detector of changes. So if that is the case, your only option is to go for a list of is filter, is cross filter to check whether the table or individual columns are filtered, and then you behave accordingly. You blank out your measure or show error messages or whatever.
I had to show this one, Adam. You're right. And now I understand you. You understand me.
Adam! So
We are on the
the thing is, Marco, if Adam loves the fact that I don't listen to you, that means he doesn't listen to you either. You can go on speaking. We can start chatting together.
Okay. So I have this other question. Can I show the budget measure when it is in a filter context that is not compatible with the budget granularity without doing any allocation?
Yes, that means you don't care at all about the number potentially being wrong, and it's actually super easy. You just do a sum. You don't have to do anything of the code that we've shown in the pattern, because
Remove
that is
the
the
pattern.
default behavior of Power BI. The entire demo was how to solve that problem. So we see that as a problem, not as a feature. But if that
Yeah.
is good for your business, that's fine. Go for that.
Nice. Believe it or not, we don't have, and now I'm checking whether we have, I skipped questions that were not related to the budgeting because otherwise we would have been completely off topic. But now if you have some last question, we have other few minutes. And so let me see. Oh, this one. I'm using data modeling in Excel. Would it be a good idea to move to Power BI? As of now, I can almost do everything flawlessly in Excel, except data visualization part. Indeed. If you just do number crunching, Excel is the best possible UI. You will regret moving to Power BI. Power BI is much better for many other things, not only the data visualization, but for example, the data modeling experience. The engine is much better. What I do often is I create my model in Power BI, I publish the model on powerbi.com, then I open Excel and I navigate the model with Excel. It just works and it's great. I mean, Alberto.
So you are saying that people should not move to Power BI?
No, I use, no, because I just said the
Okay,
opposite. I said that I create my models in Power BI because I have a lot of features that I don't have in Power Pivot for Excel. One of them is the ability to use tabular editor, because you can use tabular editor with Power BI, not with Power Pivot for Excel, even though we can use DAX Studio with Power Pivot for Excel. But it's not possible to create the model. We can just query the model in Power Pivot for Excel. We cannot modify the model, unfortunately.
Yeah, actually, it's a pity. I mean, the two words are not. That was a marriage ended badly.
Okay, so I think there are many questions about, many comments about the hardware and stuff like that. So let me see if I can remove this comment.
Okay.
Alberto,
I
I
want
think
to see
we
them,
can.
so I check if I will answer them in the blog post.
Yeah, but of course, we will publish the blog post. Alberto, you can review the chat, the log of the chat of all the channels. You can spend this night watching all the comments, and then you can update your blog post accordingly. Okay?
Okay. I will ask
Nice.
Patrick how to handle this kind of request. I'm sure he has very bright ideas on how to answer you.
Ignore me. Okay. So thank you guys. Thank you very much for attending. I have seen many questions, more than what we were able to answer, but I hope we were able to answer those that were about the budgeting. Otherwise, you still have comments, articles that you can use to send your questions.
And
Alberto?
keep in mind one important thing is this was a test. So what
Yeah.
we wanted to do was deliver a session first and then do the Q&A later. So
Yeah.
what we are really interested in is getting your feedback. Use Twitter, use chat comments, use comments on this video, do whatever you want to provide us feedback, because I mean, that was the main driver, not only chatting together, that is cool, testing new technology, that is cool, but also checking if this technique works. So if this is better than watching us deliver the session and reducing the Q&A, of course, by a lot. With that
Thank you very
said,
much.
Thank you, everybody, and till the next time.
See you next
Enjoy
time.
DAX.
Enjoy DAX. Bye-bye.
Of course.